The whispers began before Lyra's tears could even fall. They rippled through the great hall like poison, seeping into every corner where the pack had gathered to witness what should have been her mating ceremony. Instead, they watched as the man who'd promised himself to her, the man whose scent had mingled with hers for months, stepped away, his eyes averted in shame that wasn't nearly deep enough for his betrayal. "I cannot," he'd said simply, as though declining a dance rather than shattering her entire future. "I cannot take an Omega who brings nothing to strengthen our bloodline." The words hung in the air, sharp as claws against her heart. Lyra stood frozen in her ceremonial dress, adorned with flowers that now seemed to mock her with their beauty. The alpha of her small pack wouldn't meet her gaze, and her own family shifted uncomfortably, already calculating the cost of supporting a daughter deemed unworthy, unwanted, an unmated Omega past her prime. A burden, a shame. The ceremonial circle, once sacred, now felt like a prison of stares and whispered judgments. Her wolf cowered within, sensing danger from those who should have been protectors. Pack was supposed to mean safety, but in this moment, Lyra had never felt more alone. Then came the shift, a sudden electric stillness that silenced even the cruelest whispers. The air grew heavy, charged with power, that made every wolf present lower their gaze instinctively. Only Lyra, with nothing left to lose, dared look up as the massive doors swung open. Alpha King Kale entered like a storm breaking over mountains, his presence commanding submission without a single word. His reputation preceded him. Ruthless conqueror of territories, collector of oaths and enemies in equal measure. A wolf who ruled through fear rather than loyalty. He moved through the parting crowd with predatory grace, his dark eyes scanning the assembly before landing inexplicably on her. Time seemed to slow as he approached, his focus unwavering. Lyra should have been terrified. Any sane wolf would tremble before the Alpha King. But all she felt was a strange calm, as if some ancient part of her recognized what was about to happen before her conscious mind could comprehend it. When he reached her, standing in the circle where her intended had abandoned her, the Alpha King's scent enveloped her, forest after rainfall, smoke from distant fires, power barely contained beneath skin. He studied her face with an intensity that should have made her flinch. Instead, she met his gaze. Something flashed in his eyes then. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. Without warning, he reached for her, tilting her head to expose the vulnerable curve of her neck. The assembly gasped collectively, understanding before she did what was about to happen. "Mine," he growled, the single word vibrating through her bones. His teeth found her skin, and as they sank into the tender flesh where her shoulder met her neck, Lyra felt her world simultaneously end and begin anew. The Alpha King had marked her as his mate, and no one, least of all Lyra herself, knew why. Before we begin, remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Every day, a new story awaits you. Now, let us begin. The great hall of Pine Ridge Pack fell silent as Lyra entered, her ceremonial dress flowing around her like water. White flowers woven into her auburn hair caught the light from hundreds of candles, casting small dancing shadows across her face. Her heart hammered against her ribs, each step bringing her closer to the moment she'd dreamed about since childhood. Today, she would finally belong. Alpha Marcus, leader of Pine Ridge, stood at the center of the ceremonial circle, his expression solemn as he watched her approach. Beside him waited Devon, her soon-to-be mate, the wolf who would complete her. After years of feeling like an outsider, the Omega born to Beta parents, too gentle in a pack that valued strength above all, Lyra would finally have her place. Devon's family stood proudly near the front, his mother beaming with approval. Their acceptance had been hard-won. For months, they had questioned Devon's choice, wondering aloud why their son, strong and respected, would choose a mate like Lyra. But Devon had persisted, and eventually, they'd relented. Lyra reached the circle's edge, her gaze seeking Devon's. But his eyes, usually warm with affection, seemed distant, focused somewhere beyond her shoulder. A flutter of unease whispered through her, but she pushed it aside. Pre-ceremony nerves. Nothing more. "We gather tonight," Alpha Marcus began, his voice resonating through the hall, "to witness the union of two wolves, bound by choice and soon by mark." The traditional words washed over Lyra as she stepped into the circle, taking her place opposite Devon. Now he looked at her, but something in his expression made her stomach clench. Regret? Uncertainty? Devon, son of Richard, Beta of Pine Ridge Pack, Marcus continued. Do you come willingly to this circle, to take Lyra as your mate before your pack and the moon as witness? The pause that followed stretched too long. The hall, packed with every member of their pack, grew unnaturally still. Devon's voice faltered. His gaze dropped to the floor, then rose again to meet hers. I cannot. The words hung in the air, simple yet devastating. Lyra felt them like a physical blow, driving the air from her lungs. I cannot take an Omega who brings nothing to strengthen our bloodline, Devon continued, each word hammering another nail into her heart. Whispers erupted around them, rippling through the crowd like wildfire. Lyra stood frozen, unable to comprehend what was happening. This wasn't possible. They'd been courting for over a year. They'd made plans, promises. Devon? She whispered, reaching for him. What are you saying? He stepped back, avoiding her touch. I'm sorry, Lyra. I thought I could do this, but I can't. His voice hardened. My duty to the pack must come first. Your bloodline is questionable. An Omega born to betas, with no special abilities, no strength to contribute. Every word sliced deeper than the last. Lyra's vision blurred with unshed tears as she looked desperately to Alpha Marcus for intervention. But he merely sighed, his expression a mixture of pity and resignation. The male has spoken, Marcus announced to the assembly. He rejects the union. Lyra's knees threatened to buckle beneath her. Rejection at a mating ceremony was rare, almost unheard of. Most broken engagements happened privately, sparing both parties the public humiliation. But Devon had waited until this moment, when the entire pack was present, to cast her aside. The implications crashed over her in waves. Unmated Omegas past the age of 23, her exact age, were considered burdens, damaged goods. Without Devon's protection, her status in the pack would plummet even further. She'd be relegated to the most menial tasks, pitied at best, scorned at worst. I think it's for the best, Devon's mother spoke loudly from the front row, not bothering to hide her satisfaction. My son deserves a mate who will strengthen our line, not weaken it with inferior blood. Lyra flinched at the words, feeling as though she'd been slapped. Her own parents stood near the back of the hall, her father's face tight with embarrassment, her mother's eyes downcast. They wouldn't defend her. They'd always been uncomfortable with her Omega status, a status that had somehow skipped generations in their family. The ceremony is concluded, Marcus announced, stepping out of the circle. With those words, he absolved himself of any responsibility toward her fate. Devon turned away without another glance, leaving Lyra alone in the center of the broken circle. The crowd began to disperse, some casting pitying looks her way, others whispering behind their hands. No one approached her. No one offered comfort. In the space of 5 minutes, she had gone from bride to pariah. Well? A voice cut through the murmurs. Isn't this just deliciously awkward? Vivian, the Alpha's daughter, and Pine Ridge's most eligible female, sauntered toward the circle. Her smile was all teeth, her eyes gleaming with poorly concealed delight. Don't take it personally, little Omega, she purred, loud enough for nearby wolves to hear. Devon finally came to his senses. You didn't really think he'd tie himself to you forever, did you? An Omega with no special gifts, no connections, nothing to offer but a warm body? Lyra's cheeks burned with humiliation. Her wolf, usually quiet and submissive, bristled inside her, urging her to defend herself. But what was there to say? Devon had made his choice. It must be so hard, Vivian continued, circling her like prey, knowing you'll never be enough, never strong enough, never important enough, never. The massive doors at the far end of the great hall crashed open with such force that the sound reverberated like thunder. Every head turned, every conversation halted mid-sentence. 3 figures stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the night sky. As they stepped into the hall's light, gasps rippled through the assembly. The wolves of Pine Ridge immediately lowered their gazes, some dropping to their knees in a show of submission. Even in her state of shock and humiliation, Lyra recognized the insignia on their armor, the snarling wolf head encircled by a crown, the royal guard of the Alpha King. The 2 guards flanked a 3rd figure who moved with the fluid grace of a predator, each step deliberate and powerful. He was tall, impossibly broad-shouldered, dressed in black leather and silver. His dark hair, streaked with silver at the temples, was pulled back from a face that seemed carved from stone, all sharp angles and unforgiving planes. Alpha King Kyle, ruler of the 7 territories, sovereign over every pack within them. His presence was like a physical force pressing down on the room. Lyra felt her wolf instinctively curl into a submissive posture, recognizing power so far beyond their own that resistance was unthinkable. Alpha Marcus hurried forward, dropping to one knee before the king. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "this is an unexpected honor. Had we known of your visit, we would have prepared a proper welcome." The Alpha King's gaze swept the hall, assessing and dismissing most of its occupants in seconds. "Rise," he commanded, his voice deep and resonant. "I didn't announce my arrival because I prefer to see packs as they truly are, not as they pretend to be for royal visits." His eyes continued their survey until they landed on the ceremonial circle, and Lyra standing alone within it, still dressed in her mating gown, flowers wilting in her hair. Something shifted in his expression, so subtle Lyra wasn't sure she'd seen it at all. "What is this?" he asked, gesturing toward her with one gloved hand. Marcus glanced back at Lyra, discomfort evident in his posture. "A mating ceremony, Your Majesty. Or rather, what was to be one." "The male rejected her," Vivian supplied eagerly, stepping forward with a deep curtsy. "A wise decision considering her limitations." The Alpha King's eyes narrowed slightly. Without acknowledging Vivian's comment, he moved forward, parting the crowd as easily as a blade through water. When he reached the circle's edge, he stopped, studying Lyra with an intensity that made her want to disappear. But something in her, some last shred of dignity perhaps, made her lift her chin and meet his gaze. His eyes widened fractionally. They were unusual, those eyes, amber with flecks of gold, like sunlight through whiskey. A predator's eyes, observing her with cold calculation. "Your name?" he demanded. "Lyra, Your Majesty." Her voice emerged steadier than she expected. He tilted his head slightly. "And you were to be mated tonight?" She nodded, acutely aware of every eye in the hall fixed upon them, of Devon standing rigid with his family, of her own parents' anxious expressions. "Yet you stand alone in the circle." It wasn't a question, but Lyra answered anyway. "He decided I wasn't worthy of his bloodline." Something dangerous flashed in the Alpha King's eyes. He turned toward Devon, who immediately dropped his gaze to the floor. "You rejected this female? Here, publicly? During the ceremony itself?" Devon's throat worked as he swallowed hard. "Yes, Your Majesty. I recognized my duty to my pack required a stronger match." The Alpha King was silent for a long moment. Then, to everyone's astonishment, he stepped into the ceremonial circle with Lyra. A collective gasp went through the hall. The circle was sacred, meant only for those participating in the ritual. For the Alpha King to enter it with a rejected Omega was unprecedented. "You find her unworthy," he said, his voice deceptively soft as he addressed Devon. "Yet, I find myself intrigued." Without warning, he reached out and tilted Lyra's chin up with one finger. His touch was surprisingly gentle, but it sent a shock through her system like lightning. "Tell me, little wolf," he murmured, his voice pitched for her ears alone. "Do you still want him?" The question caught her off guard. Did she? An hour ago, she would have said yes without hesitation. Now, seeing Devon's cowardice, his willingness to humiliate her rather than honor his word, "No," she whispered truthfully. "Not anymore." Something like satisfaction flickered across the Alpha King's features. He nodded once, decisively, then turned to address the stunned assembly. "It seems Pine Ridge has made a grave error in judgment tonight," he announced, his voice filling the hall. "Fortunately for this female, I am here to correct it." Before Lyra could process his words, the Alpha King's hand moved to the back of her neck, his grip firm, but not painful. In one swift motion, he pulled her closer and bent his head to the junction of her neck and shoulder. Time seemed to slow as understanding dawned. This couldn't be happening. It wasn't possible. But then his teeth sank into her flesh, breaking skin, leaving a mark that would forever identify her as his. The mating mark of the Alpha King. Pain lanced through her, followed immediately by a rush of sensation so overwhelming that Lyra's knees buckled. Only his arm, suddenly around her waist, kept her upright. His scent enveloped her, pine and smoke and something wild, untamable. When he withdrew, his eyes had darkened to molten gold, pupils dilated. A drop of her blood stained his lower lip. "Mine," he growled, the word reverberating through the silent hall. And just like that, Lyra's world turned upside down for the second time that night. She had entered the hall as an Omega about to be mated to a Beta. She would leave as the mate of the most powerful Alpha in the 7 territories. The question was, why? The Alpha King turned to Marcus, whose face had gone ashen. "I'll be taking my mate with me tonight. Have her belongings sent to the royal compound by tomorrow." Of course, Your Majesty," Marcus stammered, bowing deeply. Without another word, the Alpha King guided Lyra toward the doors, his hand resting possessively at the small of her back. As they passed Devon, the king paused. "Consider yourself fortunate," he told the younger wolf, whose face had drained of all color. "Your stupidity has granted me something valuable. For that reason alone, I'll let you keep your throat intact." Devon dropped to his knees, trembling visibly. "Thank you, Your Majesty." As they continued toward the exit, Lyra risked a glance back at the hall. Her parents stood frozen in shock. Vivian looked as though she might faint. And Devon stared after her with an expression of dawning horror, only now realizing what he had cast aside. Outside, a carriage waited, black and silver with the royal insignia emblazoned on its doors. The night air was cool against Lyra's feverish skin, the mating mark at her neck throbbing with each heartbeat. The Alpha King helped her into the carriage, then climbed in after her, settling on the seat opposite. As the doors closed and the carriage began to move, reality crashed over Lyra in waves. She was mated to Alpha King Kale, the most feared wolf in the 7 territories, a man known for his ruthlessness, his cold calculation, his absolute power, and she had no idea why. When she finally found her voice, it emerged as a whisper. "Why did you do that?" His amber eyes, still glowing faintly in the darkness of the carriage, fixed on her face. For a long moment, he said nothing, simply studying her as if she were a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. "Because," he finally replied, his voice low and certain, "you belong to me. You always have." The carriage rolled through the night, its lanterns casting dancing shadows across the forest road. Inside, silence hung heavy between Lyra and the man who had just claimed her as his mate. Alpha King Kale sat opposite her, his powerful frame taking up most of the space. He watched her with unnerving intensity, those amber eyes missing nothing, not the trembling of her hands, nor the rapid pulse visible at her throat, nor the confused fear she tried desperately to hide. Lyra's mind raced. The mating mark on her neck throbbed, a constant reminder of how drastically her life had changed in mere minutes. She'd heard stories about mating bonds, how they connected wolves on a primal level, how emotions and sensations could be shared between mates. But she felt nothing from him, no sense of his thoughts or feelings, only the physical awareness of his overwhelming presence. "You're afraid," he stated, breaking the silence. Lyra glanced up, startled. "Wouldn't you be?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. To her surprise, a hint of amusement flickered across his face. "Honest. Interesting. I don't understand why you did this," she pressed, gathering her courage. "You're the Alpha King. You could have any wolf in the 7 territories. And tonight I chose you. But why? You don't even know me." He leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on his knees. The movement brought his face into the lantern light, highlighting the sharp angles of his jaw, the silver streaks in his dark hair. He was older than she'd initially thought. Not elderly by any means, but a mature wolf in his prime, with lines at the corners of his eyes that spoke of both laughter and hardship. "What makes you think I don't know you, Lyra of Pine Ridge?" The way he said her name, as if tasting it, sent an involuntary shiver down her spine. "Because we've never met," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I would have remembered." "We haven't been formally introduced," he corrected, "but I've been aware of you for some time." This revelation only confused her further. "How? Why?" Instead of answering, he changed the subject. "That male who rejected you, Devon, you were courting for how long?" "A year," she admitted, the humiliation still fresh. "And he waited until the ceremony itself to reject you." His voice hardened, publicly. Lyra looked down at her hands, still adorned with the ceremonial henna patterns meant to symbolize her union with Devon. The sight made her stomach clench painfully. Yes. Why? She shrugged helplessly. He said my bloodline wasn't strong enough, that I wouldn't contribute anything valuable to the pack. Because you're an Omega? Partly, but mostly because I don't have any special abilities. No extraordinary strength, no healing powers, nothing that makes me worthy. The words tasted bitter on her tongue. Kale's expression darkened. And your Alpha allowed this insult? Alpha Marcus doesn't concern himself with the problems of Omegas, Lyra said, unable to keep the resentment from her voice. Especially not ones with questionable bloodlines. Questionable how? My parents are both betas, she explained. Strong ones. Everyone expected me to be the same, or maybe even an alpha female. Instead, I turned out to be an Omega, the only one in my family for generations. They were disappointed. Your own family? She nodded, the old pain resurfacing. They never said it outright, but I could tell. They kept waiting for me to develop some hidden talent that would make up for being an Omega, but it never happened. The Alpha King was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice had softened almost imperceptibly. And what did you want, little wolf? Before tonight? The question caught her off guard. No one had asked what she wanted in a very long time. I wanted to belong, she admitted quietly. To have a place where I wasn't just tolerated. To have someone look at me and see more than just my rank. And you thought Devon would give you that? She laughed humorlessly. Clearly, I was wrong. The carriage hit a rough patch of road, jostling them. Kale steadied himself with a hand on the wall, his movement so fluid it seemed effortless. Everything about him radiated power and control. You still haven't told me why you marked me, Lyra said, returning to the question that consumed her thoughts. His lips curved into a slight smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Perhaps I saw something in you that neither Devon nor your pack were wise enough to recognize. What could you possibly have seen in the few minutes you were in that hall? Who says it was only a few minutes? He countered. Before Lyra could question him further, the carriage slowed. One of the royal guards opened the door, bowing deeply. We've reached the first checkpoint, Your Majesty. Kyle nodded. Remain alert. I want double patrols tonight. Yes, sire. Lyra peered out the window. They had stopped at a small outpost, where more guards in the royal colors stood at attention. The forest around them was darker here, the trees pressing closer to the road. We'll rest here briefly, Kale told her. The journey to the royal compound takes most of the night. Where exactly is the compound? Lyra asked, realizing she had only the vaguest idea of where they were headed. At the center of the 7 territories, he replied, nestled between the Silver Peaks and the Great River. It's protected by both natural barriers and my elite guards. His expression softened slightly. You'll be safe there. Safe. The word echoed in her mind. Had he sensed her fear? Not just fear of him, but fear of what awaited her as his mate. The scrutiny, the judgment, the politics of royal life. Kale exited the carriage first, then extended his hand to help her down. His palm was warm and calloused, his grip gentle but firm. The moment her feet touched the ground, the guards around them dropped to one knee, heads bowed in respect. Rise, Kale commanded, keeping Lyra's hand in his. This is your queen. You will protect her with your lives. Your queen. The words hit her like a physical blow. She wasn't just his mate. She was queen of the 7 territories. One of the female guards approached, bowing again. Your Majesty, we've prepared refreshments inside, and... She hesitated, glancing at Lyra's ceremonial dress, now wrinkled from travel. We have more suitable traveling clothes, if the queen wishes to change. Kale looked to Lyra, eyebrows raised in silent question. She nodded, suddenly desperate to be free of the dress that represented all her shattered hopes. The guard led her to a small but comfortable room within the outpost. A simple outfit had been laid out: leather pants, a soft tunic, and a warm cloak bearing the royal insignia. All in black and silver, the king's colors. Thank you, Lyra said, running her fingers over the fine materials. These are lovely. The guard smiled, the first friendly expression Lyra had seen since leaving Pine Ridge. I'm Thea, captain of the Queen's Guard. Your guard now, Your Majesty. My guard? Lyra blinked in surprise. I have a guard? Of course. The Alpha King arranged it weeks ago, though none of us expected you to join us quite so suddenly. There was a hint of curiosity in Thea's voice, but she was too well trained to ask direct questions. Weeks ago. The words echoed in Lyra's mind as she changed into the new clothes. Kale had planned this. But how? Why? She had never even seen him before tonight. When she emerged, she found him waiting outside, speaking quietly with one of his commanders. He looked up as she approached, his conversation ceasing immediately. His eyes tracked over her, taking in the royal colors she now wore, the way the fitted leather and soft fabric replaced the flowing ceremonial gown. Something heated flashed in his gaze before he masked it. Better? Lyra nodded, surprised to find she meant it. The clothes were practical but beautiful, and more importantly, they held no memories of Devon or Pine Ridge. Come, he said, offering his arm. You should eat something before we continue our journey. Inside a small dining area, a simple meal had been prepared: bread, cheese, fruit, and wine. Lyra realized suddenly that she was starving. She hadn't eaten all day, too nervous about the ceremony. As they ate, she gathered her courage once more. You said you arranged for my guard weeks ago. How could you have known about me before tonight? Cale took a sip of wine, studying her over the rim of his glass. I make it my business to know everything of importance within my territories. I'm not important, Lyra countered. That, he said quietly, is where you're wrong. Before she could press further, one of the guards approached with an urgent message. Kyle excused himself, leaving Lyra alone with her swirling thoughts. Thea reappeared, offering a warm drink that smelled of cinnamon and herbs. For the journey ahead, she explained, it will help you rest. Thank you. Lyra accepted the cup gratefully. Thea, how long have you served the Alpha King? Since he took the throne 7 years ago. What kind of ruler is he? Thea considered the question carefully. He's fair but firm. Demanding but never cruel without reason. She paused. The rumors about him, they're exaggerated mostly. He can be ruthless with enemies, yes, but he protects what's his with everything he has. And now I'm his, Lyra thought, touching the mark on her neck. He's a good king, Thea added softly. Better than most realize. Soon they were back in the carriage, continuing their journey through the night. The herbal drink made Lyra's eyelids heavy, her thoughts growing fuzzy around the edges. She fought against sleep, still wary of the man across from her, but eventually, exhaustion won out. She awoke to gentle pressure on her shoulder. Cale had moved to sit beside her, supporting her head which had fallen against his chest as she slept. We're nearly there, he murmured, his voice a low rumble she could feel through his chest. You should see your new home. Disoriented, Lyra sat up, noticing that dawn was breaking outside the carriage windows. Cale reached across her to pull back the curtain, his arm brushing hers in a casual intimacy that made her breath catch. As the landscape came into view, Lyra gasped. The royal compound rose before them, a breathtaking sight against the pink-gold sky. Stone walls surrounded buildings of white marble and dark wood, their towers reaching toward the heavens. A river glittered beyond, and snow-capped mountains formed a protective backdrop. It was both fortress and palace, imposing and beautiful. Welcome home, little wolf, Cale said, watching her reaction closely. Home, such a simple word, yet so complicated. This place was nothing like the modest pack houses of Pine Ridge. It was grander than anything she'd ever imagined, and as the carriage passed through massive iron gates that bore the royal insignia, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that she was entering not just a new home, but a new life, filled with dangers and mysteries she couldn't begin to comprehend. Chief among them, the enigmatic wolf at her side, whose mark she now bore, whose secrets ran deeper than she could fathom, and whose reasons for claiming her remained shrouded in shadow. Dawn painted the royal compound in soft gold, as servants lined up to greet their king and his unexpected queen. Lyra stood frozen at the carriage door, overwhelmed by the grandeur before her. The main building rose like a mountain of marble and glass, its towers adorned with silver spires that caught the morning light. Come, Cale said, placing a guiding hand at the small of her back. The touch was light but commanding, brooking no resistance. As they approached, the assembled staff bowed deeply. Their sense, a mixture of curiosity, confusion, and wariness, reached Lyra before their whispers did. The king has taken a mate? An Omega? Who is she? What happened to Lady Alara? The last question made Cale's shoulders tense, though his expression remained impassive. An older woman stepped forward, her silver-streaked hair pulled into a severe bun. Despite her age, she carried herself with the straight-backed posture of a warrior. Welcome home, Your Majesty, she said, her voice crisp and efficient. When her gaze fell on Lyra, Surprise flickered in her eyes before she masked it. "And welcome to you, my queen." "Thank you," Lyra managed, suddenly acutely aware of her travel-worn appearance. "This is Helena," Chaol explained. "She runs the royal household." Helena bowed again. "Everything has been prepared according to your instructions, sire." His instructions. More evidence that Chaol had planned this, despite his claim that their meeting was coincidental. "Good." Chaol addressed the assembled staff. "This is Queen Lyra, my mate. You will serve her as you serve me, with absolute loyalty." The command hung in the air, a subtle threat underneath the words. The staff bowed in unison. "Helena will show you to your chambers," he told Lyra. "I have matters to attend to, but I'll join you for the evening meal." Before she could respond, he was gone, striding away with long, purposeful steps, 2 guards falling into formation behind him. "This way, Your Majesty," Helena said, gesturing toward the main entrance. Inside, the palace was even more impressive. Marble floors gleamed beneath their feet, the walls adorned with tapestries depicting pack history and battles won. Guards stood at attention at every intersection, their eyes forward, expressions neutral. "The royal wing is this way," Helena explained, leading her up a grand staircase. "The king had your suite prepared adjacent to his own." "When?" Lyra couldn't help asking. Helena's steps faltered slightly. "I beg your pardon, Your Majesty. When did he have the suite prepared?" The older woman hesitated. "A few weeks ago. Just as Thea had said about the Queen's Guard. Weeks ago." The coincidence was too great to ignore. They reached a set of double doors carved with intricate wolf designs. Helena pushed them open, revealing a suite that took Lyra's breath away. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating a sitting room adorned in soft blues and silvers. Through archways, she glimpsed a bedroom with a massive canopied bed, a bathing chamber with a sunken tub, and a private terrace overlooking gardens below. "These are your personal chambers," Helena explained. "The king's suite connects through that door." She gestured to a door on the far wall, carved from dark wood inlaid with silver. Lyra approached one of the windows, gazing out at the view. From this height, she could see beyond the compound walls to forests and mountains beyond. It was beautiful, but it also drove home how far she was from everything familiar. "I'll have a bath drawn for you," Helena said. "You must be tired from your journey." "Thank you." Lyra turned, gathering her courage. "Helena, may I ask you something?" "Of course, Your Majesty." "Who is Lady Alara?" Helena's expression tightened. "It's not my place to—" "Please," Lyra interrupted. "I heard her name mentioned outside. I need to understand what I've walked into." The older woman sighed. "Lady Alara was from the Northern Territory. Many expected her to become the king's mate. The alliance would have been politically advantageous. And now? And now he has chosen you instead." Helena's tone was neutral, but her eyes held a warning. "That is all that matters." Before Lyra could press further, there was a knock at the door. 2 young female servants entered, carrying steaming water for the bath. "I'll send Mira to attend you," Helena said. "She'll be your personal maid." Left alone in the opulent bathroom, Lyra slowly removed her traveling clothes. The mating mark on her neck had begun to heal already, faster than a normal wound, evidence of the bond beginning to form. She touched it gently, still not quite believing it was real. As she sank into the hot water, scented with lavender and rose, the events of the past 24 hours crashed over her. Just yesterday, she had been preparing to become Devon's mate, nervous but hopeful. Now she was queen of the 7 territories, mated to a king she barely knew, in a palace filled with strangers and secrets. And somewhere in this vast compound was a woman named Alara who had expected to be in Lyra's place. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. A young woman with copper-colored hair entered, carrying fresh towels. "I'm Mira, Your Majesty. I'll be attending you." "Thank you, Mira." Lyra smiled, grateful for a friendly face. As Mira helped her wash her hair, Lyra ventured another question. "How long have you served in the royal household?" 3 years, Your Majesty." "What kind of king is he? Really?" Mira's hands paused briefly in her hair. "The Alpha King is complex. He demands excellence from everyone around him. But he's fair. The territories have prospered under his rule. Is he cruel? Not without reason." The answer echoed what Thea had told her. "He can be harsh with those who betray him, but he rewards loyalty generously." After her bath, Lyra was dressed in a simple but elegant gown of soft blue silk. Mira arranged her auburn hair in loose waves, placing a delicate silver circlet atop her head, a visible symbol of her new status. "Perfect," Mira said, stepping back to admire her work. "You look every inch a queen." Looking in the mirror, Lyra barely recognized herself. The circlet gleamed against her hair. The gown emphasized curves she hadn't known she possessed, and there was a new gravity to her expression, but her eyes still held uncertainty, fear of the unknown future that awaited her. "The king has requested your presence in the small dining hall for the evening meal," Mira informed her. "Would you like me to escort you?" Lyra nodded, grateful for the offer. Despite her exhaustion, hunger gnawed at her stomach, and more importantly, she needed answers that only Cale could provide. As they navigated the labyrinthine corridors, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Several times, she caught glimpses of courtiers observing her from doorways or alcoves, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Finally, they reached a set of doors guarded by 2 royal soldiers, who bowed deeply as they approached. "His Majesty awaits you inside," one of them said, opening the door. Lyra took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and stepped inside, ready to face the man who had turned her world upside down, and demand the truth about why he had chosen her. The small dining hall was anything but. A long table dominated the center, though only 2 places had been set, one at the head and one to the right. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing lights across polished marble floors, and a fire roared in a hearth large enough to roast an ox. Kyle stood as Lyra entered, his imposing figure silhouetted against the flames. He'd changed into formal attire, a midnight blue tunic embroidered with silver, black pants and boots that gleamed in the firelight. The outfit emphasized his broad shoulders and powerful build, reminding her that he was not just a king, but an alpha in his prime. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes traveling from her circlet to her gown in a slow, appreciative sweep that made heat rise to her cheeks. "Thank you," she replied, unsure how to address him. "Your Majesty seemed wrong, given that he was her mate, but using his name felt too intimate." He pulled out her chair, the gesture surprisingly gentlemanly from a man with such a fearsome reputation. As she sat, his fingers brushed her shoulder, lingering just long enough for her to feel the warmth of his touch through the silk of her gown. "Wine?" he offered, already pouring deep red liquid into her goblet. Lyra nodded, taking a small sip to steady her nerves. The wine was rich and complex, nothing like the simple fare served at Pine Ridge gatherings. Servants appeared with the first course, a delicate soup that smelled of herbs and summer vegetables. For several minutes, they ate in silence, the only sounds the clink of silverware and the crackling of the fire. Finally, Lyra gathered her courage. "Why me?" Kyle's amber eyes lifted to meet hers, his expression unreadable. "Direct. I appreciate that." "Then appreciate it with an answer," she pressed, emboldened by the wine and her growing frustration. Why would the Alpha King of the 7 territories claim an Omega from a minor pack as his mate, especially when there was already someone, Lady Alara, who expected to be in my place? His eyebrows rose slightly at the mention of Alara, but his voice remained calm. "You've been gathering information." "Trying to," Lyra admitted, "though everyone seems reluctant to tell me anything of substance." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "They're loyal. To you. And now to you as well, whether they like it or not." The second course arrived. Roasted quail with forest mushrooms and glazed root vegetables. Cale waited until the servants had departed before speaking again. "Alara was never going to be my mate," he said, cutting into his quail with precise movements. "A political alliance, nothing more." "Then why did everyone expect it?" "Because it made sense on paper. Her father controls the Northern Territory, the most fractious of my domains. The Union would have secured his loyalty. So instead you chose me, an Omega with no political value whatsoever," Lyra said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "That doesn't explain anything." Cale set down his knife and fork, his full attention now on her. "You're wrong about your value." "Am I? My own pack considered me worthless." "Your pack," he said, his voice hardening, "was led by fools." The vehemence in his tone surprised her. "You knew them? Before tonight?" "I know every alpha in my territories. Marcus of Pine Ridge is a mediocre leader who maintains his position through intimidation rather than true strength." Kyle took a sip of wine. "He's also short-sighted. He failed to recognize what was right in front of him." "And what's that?" Kyle's eyes locked with hers. You. The single word hung between them, loaded with meaning she couldn't decipher. I don't understand, she said, frustration building. What's so special about me? Have you never wondered why an Omega was born to Beta parents? Why your wolf never manifested the abilities everyone expected? The question struck a nerve. Of course she'd wondered. Had spent her entire life wondering why she'd been born different. Why she hadn't received the gifts that would make her worth something in her pack's eyes. Every day, she admitted quietly. Did it ever occur to you that perhaps your wolf was hiding, not absent? Lyra stared at him, uncomprehending. Hiding? Why would it hide? Protection, perhaps. Self-preservation. Kyle leaned forward slightly. What if I told you that you aren't what everyone believes? That there's more to you than even you know? A chill ran down Lyra's spine. What are you saying? Before he could answer, the doors burst open. A soldier rushed in, his face tight with urgency. Your Majesty, he said, bowing hastily. Forgive the interruption, but there's been an incident at the northern border. Lady Alara's father is demanding an audience. Cale's expression darkened. When? He's here now, sire. In the throne room. With a muttered curse, Cale stood. I'll deal with this. He turned to Lyra. We'll continue our conversation later. Please finish your meal. But, Lyra began, desperate for answers. Later, he promised, his tone softening slightly. This won't wait. And then he was gone, leaving her alone with her half-eaten meal and a mind whirling with questions. What did he mean about her wolf hiding? What did he think he knew about her that she didn't know herself? The door opened again, and for a moment, Lyra thought Cale had returned. Instead, Thea entered, her expression serious. Your Majesty, she said with a small bow. The king asked me to escort you back to your chambers. It's not safe for you to be wandering the palace tonight. Not safe? Lyra set down her goblet. What's happening? Thea hesitated. Politics, my queen. Lord Aaron, Lady Alara's father, is not pleased about the king's choice of mate. Me, you mean? Yes. Thea's directness was refreshing. He had his heart set on the alliance, and he's not the only one who's disappointed. Are they a danger to me? The king doesn't take chances with your safety. Thea's hand rested on the hilt of her sword. Neither do I. As they left the dining hall, Lyra could hear raised voices echoing from somewhere deep within the palace. One of them Cale's, commanding and fierce. The sound sent an involuntary shiver through her, a reminder of just how powerful her new mate was. Back in her chambers, Mira helped her prepare for bed, brushing out her hair and replacing the formal gown with a silk nightdress. But sleep seemed impossible with so many unanswered questions racing through her mind. What did Cale know about her? Why had he really chosen her? And what danger now lurked within the palace walls because of that choice? As she stood on her terrace, gazing up at the stars, Lyra touched the mating mark on her neck. It no longer hurt. In fact, it tingled pleasantly under her fingertips. The bond was forming, whether she understood it or not. She was the Alpha King's mate now, his queen. And somehow, she would have to find the strength to fill that role, even as she unraveled the mystery of why he had chosen her in the first place. From the shadows of the garden below, a pair of eyes watched her, eyes filled with hatred and the promise of vengeance. Sleep eluded Lyra. She tossed restlessly in the massive bed, the silk sheets tangling around her legs as her mind refused to quiet. The conversation with Cale played on repeat, his cryptic words about her wolf hiding, about her being more than she seemed. A soft knock at the door connecting her chamber to the king's startled her fully awake. She sat up, clutching the sheets to her chest. Yes? She called, voice uncertain. The door opened, revealing Kyle. He'd shed his formal attire for simpler clothes, a loose black shirt and pants, but even dressed down, he emanated power. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it in frustration. I apologize for disturbing you, he said, remaining in the doorway. I saw the light under your door. Lyra tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, acutely aware of her thin nightdress and tousled appearance. I couldn't sleep. Neither could I. He hesitated, an uncharacteristic uncertainty in his posture. May I come in? She nodded, pulling the blankets higher as he crossed the room. Instead of approaching the bed, however, he moved to the window, gazing out at the moonlit gardens below. What happened with Lord Aaron? Lyra asked. He expressed his displeasure with my choice of mate. Kale's voice was controlled, but she could hear the tension beneath it, rather vocally. Because I'm not his daughter. Because you're not controllable. He turned to face her, moonlight casting half his face in shadow. Aaron wanted influence over the throne through Alara. He didn't come to negotiate. He came to threaten. A chill ran through Lyra. What did he threaten? Nothing he can deliver on. Kale's dismissive tone suggested otherwise. Is that why Thea said it wasn't safe for me to wander the palace? Kale's jaw tightened. Aaron brought a sizable entourage with him. They're being housed in the East Wing, as far from our chambers as possible. Still, it's better if you're cautious until they depart. He crossed to a chair near her bed and sat, his large frame making the elegant furniture seem small. But that's not why I came to speak with you. Lyra drew a steadying breath. You were going to explain what you meant at dinner. About my wolf. Yes. He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. What do you know about rare wolf classifications? The question caught her off guard. Not much. Just the basics. Alpha's lead, Beta's support, Omega's nurture. That's the simplified version most packs teach. Kale agreed. But there are rarer types. Wolves with special abilities or attributes that appear only once in many generations. Like healers and seers? Those are more common examples, yes. But there are others, far rarer and more powerful. His amber eyes studied her intently. Have you ever heard of a Luna wolf? Lyra frowned, searching her memory. I think so. In old stories. They were supposed to have some connection to the moon, weren't they? More than a connection. Luna wolves draw their power directly from the moon. They can heal with moonlight, see in complete darkness, and some can even manipulate the elements under a full moon. They sound like myths. Most people believe they are, Kale acknowledged. But they exist. They're just incredibly rare and incredibly vulnerable in their early years. A suspicion began to form in Lyra's mind. Why are you telling me this? Kale met her gaze directly. Because you, Lyra, are a Luna wolf. The firstborn in the 7 territories in over a century. The words hit her like a physical blow. That's impossible. I'm an Omega. I have no special abilities, no powers. You're not an Omega. His voice was gentle but firm. Your true nature has been suppressed, either by instinct or by something more deliberate. That doesn't make sense. I've never shown any signs of... Haven't you? Kale interrupted. Think, Lyra. Have you never experienced anything unusual around the full moon? Heightened senses? Unexplained phenomena? She started to shake her head, then stopped. There had been moments, strange flickers of something just beyond her grasp. Nights when the moonlight seemed to sing to her, when she felt almost weightless beneath its glow. Dreams where she ran through forests bathed in silver light, faster and stronger than she'd ever been awake. Maybe a few things, she admitted hesitantly, but nothing significant enough to make me a Luna wolf, because something, or someone, has been suppressing your true nature. Kale's expression darkened. Luna wolf pups are born with a temporary protective camouflage. They present as Omegas until they mature fully, usually around their 25th year. It's nature's way of keeping them safe until they can control their abilities. Lyra's mind raced. I'm 23. Yes, you're approaching your awakening. He leaned closer. That's why I had to find you before it happened. Luna wolves who awaken without guidance can lose control of their powers. Some go mad. Others what? Die, he said simply. The surge of power is too much for them to handle alone. Lyra clutched the blankets tighter, her knuckles turning white. This is insane. If what you're saying is true, why didn't my parents know? Why didn't Alpha Marcus recognize what I was? Most wolves today wouldn't recognize a Luna wolf if one stood before them. The knowledge has been lost over generations. Kale's voice softened. And there are some who actively hunt Luna wolves for their power. Hunt? The word sent ice through her veins. A Luna wolf's heart, consumed under a full moon, is said to grant extraordinary power. His expression was grim. It's why your kind nearly went extinct. The implications crashed over her like a wave. If what he was saying was true, if she really was this rare, powerful wolf, it changed everything. Her whole life she'd been told she was weak, defective. But what if she'd actually been something extraordinary all along? How did you know? She whispered. How did you find me? Kale's eyes gleamed in the moonlight. I've been searching for years. There are signs, for those who know how to look. Subtle markers and bloodlines, patterns and birth charts. A small smile touched his lips. And there are dreams. Dreams? Luna wolves call to their protectors in dreams. For the past year, I've dreamed of you. Of a wolf with silver fur running beneath moonlight, calling for help. Lyra's heart stuttered. She'd had those same dreams. Running as a wolf with silver fur, searching for something, someone, she couldn't name. You said protectors, she noted, seizing on the word. Not mates. Kyle's expression became unreadable. The most powerful Luna wolves need anchors, strong alphas who can help ground their power. Traditionally, these pairs become mates. So you marked me because of what I am, not who I am. The realization shouldn't have hurt, but it did. I marked you, he said carefully, because you needed protection immediately. Your rejection at the ceremony would have sent your emotions spiraling, potentially triggering an early awakening. Convenient timing. Not convenience. Fate. Kale stood, moving to sit on the edge of her bed, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. I've been watching Pine Ridge for weeks, waiting for the right moment to approach you. I never intended for you to go through that public humiliation. You could have come sooner, Lyra said, unable to keep the accusation from her voice. And risk Lord Aaron discovering my interest in you? Or worse, those who hunt Luna wolves. He shook his head. I needed absolute secrecy until I could bring you under my protection. So I'm what? Your responsibility? A duty? Something flickered in his eyes. Frustration, perhaps, or something deeper. You are far more than that, Lyra. The way he said her name, low and intimate, made her breath catch. He reached out, his fingers gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. The touch sent a shock of awareness through her. The full moon is in 3 days, he murmured. We don't have much time to prepare for your awakening. And if you're wrong, if I'm just an ordinary Omega, his gaze held absolute certainty. I'm not wrong. I can feel it. Here. He took her hand and placed it over his heart. Beneath her palm, his heartbeat was strong and steady. Our bond is already forming, even if you can't sense it yet. Once your true nature awakens, you'll feel it too. Lyra didn't pull her hand away. His chest was warm beneath the thin fabric of his shirt, his skin radiating a heat that seemed to call to something deep within her. I'm afraid, she admitted softly. I know. His larger hand covered hers, keeping it pressed to his heart. But you won't face it alone. I will be with you every step of the way. The promise in his words wrapped around her like a shield. Despite everything, the shock, the fear, the lingering disbelief, Lyra found herself believing him. Something about Kale's presence calmed the storm of emotions within her, anchoring her when she might otherwise have been swept away. Rest now, he said, gently releasing her hand. Tomorrow we begin your training. As he rose to leave, Lyra caught his wrist. Stay, she whispered, surprising herself with the request. Just stay until I fall asleep. Kyle studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. He settled back on the edge of the bed, his weight creating a reassuring dip in the mattress. Close your eyes, he murmured. As Lyra drifted toward sleep, she felt his fingers lightly stroking her hair. The sensation was soothing, protective. For the first time since leaving Pine Ridge, she felt safe. Her last waking thought was that perhaps being claimed by the Alpha King wasn't the end of her story, but rather its true beginning. The 3 days before the full moon passed in a blur of training and preparation. Each morning, Kale took Lyra to a secluded courtyard deep within the palace grounds, where ancient stone circles channeled the moon's energy even in daylight. There, he taught her meditation techniques to center her mind and control the power that would soon surge through her. Breathe, he instructed, his voice a calm anchor as they sat facing each other in the circle's center. Feel the moonlight that lingers in the stones. Draw it toward you. Lyra closed her eyes, concentrating on the faint silver energy she could now sense. A whisper at first, then stronger as she focused. When she opened her eyes, a soft glow emanated from her fingertips, fading as quickly as it appeared. I did it, she gasped, staring at her hands in wonder. Kale's smile was filled with pride. You're already connecting with your true nature. The training was exhausting, but exhilarating. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt something awakening inside her. Not the weak, submissive wolf she'd always known, but something wild and powerful, stretching after a long slumber. Yet with each new discovery came new dangers. Lord Aaron and his entourage remained in the palace, their presence a constant threat. Thea and her guards shadowed Lyra everywhere, vigilant against potential attacks. Aaron is watching too closely, Cale told her on the eve of the full moon, his expression grave. I don't trust him. There are rumors his family once hunted Luna wolves. Do you think he knows what I am? I think he suspects something. He wouldn't risk open defiance unless the stakes were extraordinarily high. Cale took her hands in his touch sending warmth through her veins. Tomorrow night, I'm taking you to the sacred grove for your awakening. It's safer than remaining here. That night, as moonrise approached, Lyra stood on her balcony, watching the sky darken to indigo. Her body hummed with anticipation, every nerve ending sensitized. The nearly full moon emerged from behind clouds, and its light caressed her skin like a physical touch, making her gasp. A knock at her door broke her reverie. She expected Mira or Thea, but when she opened it, Lady Alara stood in the corridor, her beauty as striking as the coldness in her eyes. May I come in? She asked, her voice honey-sweet, but laced with venom. Every instinct warned Lyra to refuse, but curiosity won out. Briefly, Alara glided into the room, her gaze sweeping dismissively over the decor. So this is where the king keeps his pet Omega. I am his mate and queen, Lyra corrected, her voice stronger than she expected. For now. Alara's smile was sharp as a blade. Tell me, do you know why he really chose you? What he plans to use you for? Lyra maintained a neutral expression, unwilling to reveal what Cale had shared. Why don't you enlighten me? My father has been investigating your unique heritage. Alara circled her like a predator. He's discovered the most fascinating legends about wolves with silver fur who draw power from the moon. A chill ran down Lyra's spine. Legends are often exaggerated. Perhaps, but the heart of such a wolf, consumed under a full moon. Now that power is very real. Alara stopped directly before her. A power my father intends to possess. The threat was unmistakable. You should leave, Lyra said quietly. Oh, I will. But tomorrow night, when the moon is full, Alara's smile widened. My father's hunters will find you, no matter where Cale tries to hide you. After Alara departed, Lyra rushed to find Cale, her heart pounding. She found him in the war room with his commanders, already planning for potential threats. Aaron knows, she blurted out as she entered. Alara just threatened me directly. Cale's expression darkened to something terrible. Guards, he commanded, find Lady Alara and confine her to her quarters. Double the patrols on all palace entrances. It won't be enough, Lyra said. She mentioned hunters, specializing in tracking Luna wolves. Then we leave now, he decided. Tonight. Within the hour, they were riding through the forest, accompanied only by Thea and 3 elite guards. The moon, nearly full, lit their path through ancient trees that seemed to whisper as they passed. The sacred grove lies beyond these woods, Cale explained as they rode side by side. It's a place of power, protected by magic older than the packs themselves. As they crested a hill, Lyra gasped at the sight below. A perfect circle of silver-bark trees surrounding a pool that reflected the moon like a mirror. The air itself seemed to shimmer with energy. It's beautiful, she whispered. They made camp at the grove's edge, waiting for midnight when the moon would reach its zenith. As the hours passed, Lyra felt the change beginning, a warmth spreading through her limbs, her senses sharpening until she could hear heartbeats, smell emotions. It's starting, she told Kyle, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and excitement. He took her hands, his touch grounding her. Remember your training. Don't fight the power. Channel it. At midnight, they entered the grove alone. Moonlight bathed the clearing in silver brilliance, the pool's surface glowing with unearthly light. Lyra stepped to its edge, drawn by an instinct older than reason. I'm afraid, she admitted, turning to Cale. He moved behind her, his hands on her shoulders, his presence a steady anchor. I'm with you. Always. Drawing a deep breath, Lyra stepped into the pool. The moonlight struck the water and exploded upward in a column of pure silver energy that enveloped her. Pain seared through her body, burning away the false Omega nature that had hidden her true self. Her wolf, dormant for so long, surged forward with a roar that echoed through the grove. Her shift happened in a heartbeat, bones realigning, skin giving way to fur as white as moonlight itself. Where Lyra the woman had stood, a magnificent wolf now emerged, larger than any Omega had right to be. her coat shimmering with an inner light that cast shadows backward. Through new eyes, she saw Kale shift into his wolf form, massive and black as midnight, his amber eyes glowing with pride, and something deeper, warmer. For one perfect moment, they stood together in the moonlight, silver and shadow, queen and king. Then came the scent of intruders, hunters moving through the forest toward the grove. Aaron had found them. Lyra's newfound instincts surged. Without conscious thought, she threw back her head and howled, a sound unlike any wolf's call, carrying power that rippled outward like a shockwave. The moonlight around her condensed, forming silver spears that hovered in the air at her command. She felt Kale's amazement through their strengthened bond, his awe at her power mixing with fierce protectiveness. Together, they faced the edge of the grove where shadows moved among the trees. Lord Aaron stepped into the clearing, flanked by black-clad hunters carrying silver weapons. His eyes widened at the sight of Lyra's wolf form, glowing with lunar power. The legends were true, he breathed, greed evident in his expression. Take her. But as the hunters advanced, they hit an invisible barrier. Lyra's power extended outward in a protective dome around the grove. She stepped forward, the moonlit water rippling beneath her paws, and growled a warning that vibrated through the earth itself. I am not your prey, she projected, the thought carrying to every mind present. I am Luna Wolf, mate of the Alpha King, queen of the 7 territories. The silver spears floating around her quivered with deadly intent. Impossible, Aaron whispered, backing away. No Luna Wolf has manifested such power in centuries. Kale's black wolf moved to stand beside her, their shoulders touching, their power mingling where fur met fur. Through their bond, she felt his fierce pride and unwavering support. Show them who you truly are, my queen. Lyra raised her muzzle to the moon and howled again, this time channeling her power not as a weapon, but as a display of majesty. Silver light erupted around her in a crown of moonbeams, illuminating the grove until it shone like daylight. One by one, the hunters dropped their weapons and knelt, overcome by the ancient power before them. Even Aaron, ambitious and cruel, could not resist the instinctive submission to a force so far beyond his comprehension. In that moment of triumph, Lyra felt the final pieces of her identity lock into place. She was not weak. She had never been weak. She was Luna Wolf, born to bring balance to the territories, destined to stand beside the Alpha King not as his possession, but as his equal. And as Kale's wolf pressed against hers, his amber eyes reflecting the same certainty she felt, Lyra knew she had finally found what she'd always sought. Not just belonging, but purpose. Not just acceptance, but love. The moon watched over them, full and bright, a silent witness to the birth of a queen who would change everything. If you enjoyed this story, a like or comment really helps. And if you wish to hear more tales like this one, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next tale.